Excellent. Welcome, everyone. We do have a quorum and everyone is present and ready to go. Um, and with that, are there any additions to the agenda? All right, hearing none, we're moving forward. Now, for approval of the minutes, we are going to take them one by one. There is the open meeting agenda minutes for 7/23/24. Is there any discussion? Any edits? Have all the members reviewed the minutes, the open minutes?
Yes.
All right. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as produced? Jake?
So moved.
So move, Member Weissman has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Butler seconded the motion to accept the minutes as produced. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. All right, we have a unanimous consent. Thank you all very much. So moved. And now for the closed meeting minutes for 7/23/24. Have all the members reviewed those minutes? Are there any updates, edits? No, hearing none, the chair is open for a motion to accept the closed meeting minutes as produced. So moved by Member Weissman, seconded. Thank you very much by Member Jackson Stanley. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. The closed meeting minutes are accepted with a unanimous vote as produced. Thank you all so very much. And now, Jarrett, for our state administrator's report.
All right, thank you. First up, I always like to do this when I have meetings. There's 82 more days before election day, so yes.
Oh, thank goodness. I thought you were saying there was 82 points you were about to talk about, but thank you so very much for that update.
Right. So, we're it's a marathon and then it becomes a sprint and everything else. But yes, it's right now, as we turn the page and, August is going to go into September, more and more important deadlines are going to be upcoming and moving forward. First up, from the last meeting there, I attended the National Association of State Election Directors, NASHED Summer Conference in July. This was like really my first conference with them. The one in the winter one, I was commuting back and forth because it was in DC and was handling the candidate filing deadline. So it was nice to meet my counterparts from across the nation and hearing some of their issues and problems that they're facing. It's very similar to the ones that we are facing here. But we've had the panels included updates from the U.S. Postal Service, which was very informative, the EAC, and then just some best practices. So, like I said, it was great to meet my counterparts and to get those updates as well. The biggest thing right now is the Prince George's special election. That was basically it was filled. It was the election was held on August 6th. We had 39 drop boxes that were deployed. We had 9 locations to offer in-person early voting from July 31st through the 5th, and then on election day on the 6th. We had, I would say, a nice turnout for that. Some of the figures are on our website. The reports are there. Additionally, I would say that we had a very successful outreach campaign that we initiated across various social media platforms. Overall, the campaign generated close to 10,000 clicks and reached an impressive over 1.8 million impressions. So, while that wasn't necessarily like the greatest of things there, but in a short period of time to get it up and running, and the modifications that were needed, that I would say that it was a successful effort, and we had a lot of click-throughs rates that were higher than average on some platforms as well, which I found promising, as especially as now we are moving forward to the general election and in using the same sort of outreach campaign there. So I'm happy about that. The special election, the general, is going to be conducted simultaneously with the presidential general election. So it's a cost savings, and and consolidating those two elections is best practices there. In the candidacy and campaign finance division now, we had a report that was due for the Prince George's special election that was due on July 26th. 12 of the 13 candidates filed timely. Then now they're going to go on the same schedule as everyone else who is participating in the presidential election. So their pre-general 1 report will be due August 27th. Notices would be sent out in emails as well, pre-report notices to them. So that's ongoing there. Public financing, nothing really new to kind of report in that area there. We are going to meet with Montgomery County to start talking about 2026 relatively soon as well. And you see the website activities there and enforcement actions that were made by the division. Most of the time, it was, as you can see, we had failure to maintain a bank account, disbursements by unauthorized methods, and missing authority line on some materials there.
Thank you. 1 second. We have a question.
Sure.
From Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, as I understand it, we are likely a strong possibility that Prince George's will then have to have another election to fill the councilmanic seat that is currently being vacated by the nominee for the at-large seat. Is that correct? And if so, have there been any conversations with Prince George's board or the council in terms of timing for that?
Well, it's a little premature because, right? I mean, technically speaking, right? Yes, if the Democratic nominee wins the special election in November, it would trigger another special election for that district, because that individual is an incumbent council member for a district and then would be going to at large. And so, yes, that would trigger a special election. Funny that you mentioned that. I received emails and we started back and forth with the county council about trying to change some of their charter provisions, their code, to be reflective of the modern vote by mail method. I would say conversations are starting, and you're also giving a little foreshadowing as to one of our departmental bills as well to help rectify that. So yes, on both fronts, yes, I'm going to take care of it on the state, hopefully with the bill, and then with the county council as well, and working through with them on that.
Great. So we're not only reactive, we're proactive. Excellent.
Exactly.
Thank you. Moving forward.
On election management, basically we had 2 statewide petitions and we're working through them. The deadline for the statewide petitions is August 27th. So one was for the Green Party to be recognized as a political party, and then their candidates would then also appear on the ballot if successful. And the other statewide petition is Robert Kennedy Jr. As presidential, as an unaffiliated candidate for president. So yes. On information systems, technology, and cybersecurity, we have basically the project has been the statewide poll book modernization project is the new project that we're going through, and it's been designated as a major IT development project by Do It. We've got the funds now appropriated for it. And the request for proposal, the RFP, is under development. And we're looking to make sure that that continues on track to make sure so that we can continue moving forward on that. The new voting system project, we released an RFI, which is a request for information. We received multiple responses there, and a draft RFP is currently under development as well. And the new campaign reporting system, CRIS project, we had the RFP, it was released. We've received proposals, they're under review, and we'll be making determinations after, you know, the process goes through with reviewing the proposals technically, and then financial, and making an award based upon the best product that we have there. So, and finally there, we're also going to start looking at modernizing and moving and updating MD Voters, because that has been in service since 2006. So, you know, this project, like all major IT projects, expects to take 2 to 3 years to complete from, you know, this phase now, which is basically developing the specs and moving forward with it. We're getting the funding. And, you know, basically the plan is to make sure that it's ready to implement for the 2030 census and redistricting. So that's the goal, and, you know, making it as seamless and smooth as possible there. So that's kind of the bigger tickets there. Cybersecurity, you know, we have been, you know, making sure that our operations center is operating, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And, you know, moving forward to, we also have other layers of independent threat monitoring and managing services. Additionally, we of course work with our federal and state partners as well to, you know, increase our cybersecurity presence. So, you know, we are always getting our briefings along the line there. And recently we did a tabletop exercise on August 13th at Anne Arundel County. It was, you know, loss of power and, you know, backups and our contingency plans, and really, I would say, exercising everyone to the capacity there. It was well attended. All the local boards were there. One of the things that I found interesting that I did not know about in the tabletop exercise that came out of it was when the power went out. They were talking about bathroom issues, and I was like, well, what was a bathroom issue? You just flush, right? And they were like, no, because everything's electronic with the automatic flushes and stuff like that. And so, right, I see member Jake going, yes, right, like, and I was just like, wow, that didn't even dawn on me until that, and I was like glad someone else had that idea there. But with that, there was a lot of great discussions, some great ideas that came out of that, and we're going to make sure that their disaster and recovery plans are bringing in those new ideas as well to make sure that they're a part of that. So I think it was a great exercise, and something that we will continue to make sure that we, you know, implement for further elections as well. Procurements, basically, I talked about the big three earlier that are out there, and then you know, here's just kind of what's going on with some modifications that we've done. Most of the modifications, of course, were because of the special election than anything else there. So, but you know, we wanted to. One thing that we did do was send a cure letter to our surge staffing vendor because there were some recruitment shortfalls in labor categories during the primary, and we wanted to make sure that those shortfalls would not occur again for the general election. So that's kind of where we're on top of our procurements and making sure that our vendors meet the letter that they're supposed to meet for payment. For mail-in voting, the deadline to request to mail you a Cavo ballot is September 21st. You know, the deadline for domestic is September 23rd. Preparations are underway. We're moving forward with it. And, you know, making sure that the permanent mail-in ballot lists as well. Additionally, you know, like I said, we received updates from the Postal Service at NASHED, the conference there, and we're always hosting more calls with the post office and the LBEs to ensure coordination and communication regarding mail-in voting. For a non-mail-in voting, a vote by mail state, we have a significant number of people that do vote by mail, and it's almost getting to the point where I would almost consider us a vote by a mail-in state, just based upon the numbers. You know, on the primary, it was almost 40%. I would say if it stays like that for the general, then, you know, that is a significant number of people that vote by mail in the state. Hearing by text.
Jared, with that,
Yes.
I appreciate your feedback and your updates, but I want to make sure we have questions that come up that they ask
Sure.
you the question in a timely manner. I saw, Diane, that you initially raised your hand. Did you want to ask a question at this time, or you could?
That was back on the security. I know that we had this huge security breach this week, of 2 billion United States Social Security numbers. Is that going to cause us any issues?
No, and we don't even use Cloudflare too when that issue shut down some issues as well. You know, but you know, our systems are safe and secure, and you know, I would say that's what I'd like to say in the public.
So we were not impacted at this time.
Yeah.
Now, with regards to the mail-in voting, Jared, did the special election also give you a good reflection on where we're going with regards to the mail-in voting process that just occurred in Prince George's County? Was that a good indicator that we should be doing?
Yeah, I would say the other part too, which was just you know, that was a complete vote by mail election, and with, you know, in-person voting almost as like an afterthought there. And so, you know, that was a significant number of population that maybe not be on the mail-in voting list, but, you know, it was a high turnout based upon the mail. And I would say that it was probably, if for a special election, you know, that was completely very close, you know, as much attention that we could bring to it as possible. The turnout probably would have been significantly lower if it wasn't a vote by mail election. So I think
for that statement, I would
Yeah.
love to have some data to back that up, because I really
Sure.
like to champion that statement. But looking at prior special elections in the past, in comparison to this one that was conducted, I think that would give us a good understanding of where we're heading, or where we should head. But go ahead, Diane.
Two
But
more
thank you.
questions. So the sheet that you sent out, we paid $26,000, whatever, to advertise that election. Was that the sheet that you sent out?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what it was. So the state board advertises for county special elections.
No, we had the contract, and so we had the infrastructure ready for the outreach program.
Okay.
And so, you know, that is still a cost that will go back to the county.
Okay.
That was a modification to our contract there, but you know, we had it and ready because the county did not have the infrastructure or the outreach program that we have.
Yeah. And then one more fast thing. When you and I were out at PG County, we discussed the problem with the drop boxes, and we figured out a way to write open on the slit where where the lock is.
So I forgot to mention that earlier. Yes, I did visit with Board Member Butler, a couple of the vote centers out there on election day. It was great to talk to the election judges out there, as well as look at some of the canvas. Yes, we have. I have started a process with the logistics team here, and and the vote by mail team, and also with some of the local directors as well to kind of come up with a solution besides just open, or maybe they want to start hiding the lock. And I think they are coming up with something that is a viable solution by the end of this month for everything.
Right, thanks.
Appreciate it, Jared. Thank you very much for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So overall here, so continuing on
Voter
here with
registration and operations.
voter registration and operations, we're of course conducting our internal audits, our monthly audits of the voter registration data to comply with federal and state laws. And our team, of course, does a comprehensive post-election audit and evaluating 18 areas, and that has been sent out to the local directors as well. And then finally, we had the clear ballot audit for the Prince George's special primary as well, and that went so far swimmingly well. So so they've everything is moving forward with our audits and making and verifying the results of the election and ensuring the integrity of our voter registration records right there. As you can see, we have over 4.1 over 4.1 million people, a little bit under 4.2, and of course, working closely with MVA and those transactions, because they're our biggest I would say agency to help with voter registration transactions. And just overall, with that, there was no other exercise duties since the last administrator's report. And so I submit the state administrator's report to you.
Thank you very much, Jared.
Have we come up with another way to do the other 25 states that Eric is not doing? Yeah. You were working on something with that, Jared.
So, one of the things was, I think I'm going to start talking with Eric more so about trying to help expand their process and their footprint, and to see why the other states were leaving. I think that, and overall, there's, I would say information, maybe even with the EAC, and seeing what capabilities they can do in this area. It's not as simple as just exchanging list to list and having someone match up and just go, Jared DeMarinis in, I would say Kansas is the same Jared DeMarinis in Maryland, right? So there's other factors in there. So that's why I think Eric as an entity is very good, because it takes more data to verify that this person is truly the same person. But that NASHED conference there has opened it a little bit. I've talked to some of my counterparts about it. It's not a short-term solution at this point here.
Okay.
All right, thank you
Thank you.
very much, Jared. Thank you, Diane, Member Butler. Really appreciate it. Are there any other questions or concerns regarding the administrator's report? Okay, thank you very much. Dan Corbin, Assistant Attorney General, report is now yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You'll see the Assistant Attorney General's report for this month has expanded. You're getting sued more. Congratulations. Not much to report on many of the cases, but some of the newer ones I'll say a brief word about. Number one on the list is still Sullivan v. Summers. Nothing to publicly report this month on Sullivan v. Summers. Wicomico County branch of the NAACP versus Wicomico County. The only thing to report there is that the pending motion for a preliminary injunction will not affect the ballot question that is being placed on the ballot in Wicomico County. The parties have stayed those preliminary injunction proceedings for the time being and have worked out how that preliminary injunction will not affect the ballot question. So Wacomico County will have a ballot question. There should be no issues for it. Number 3, Gibson v. Frederick County, no updates there. Again, waiting for the Fourth Circuit decision in that case. Maryland election integrity versus the state board. OAG filed Kelly's brief. That is the responsive brief on August 8th, about a week ago, exactly a week ago today. Maryland election integrity now has 21 days to file a reply brief, and thereafter it will be in the court's hands. The court is still able to schedule oral argument if it wants to hear an oral argument. If not, we will just be waiting for a decision. The next 2 cases are petition challenges out of Baltimore City. Mayor and City Council of Baltimore versus the Baltimore City Board of Elections, and Frederick et al. Versus the Baltimore City Board of Elections. Those are 2 different lawsuits challenging 2 different ballot questions that were putting a proposed charter amendment, 2 different proposed charter amendments before the voters of Baltimore City. Mayor and City Council of Baltimore, the first one is about the colloquially known baby bonus charter amendment. It would be an amendment to the Baltimore City Charter that directs the payment of a certain sum of money to parents of newborn children in the city when those children are born. Frederick v. Baltimore City Board of Elections was about the charter amendment provision to cap the city's property tax at progressively lower rates over the next, I believe, decade. In both cases, the Circuit Court for Baltimore City ruled that the proposed charter amendment was not appropriate charter material, and therefore the questions should not be put on the ballot. That is currently the order of the court, and so SBE is moving forward preparing the ballot without those charter questions. However, both cases have been appealed on an expedited basis to the Supreme Court of Maryland. All parties are briefing right now. The first round of briefs are due in 5 days. The second round of briefs, where SBE will be filing a brief, is due on August 26th. Our oral argument will be on August 28th. And in both cases, SBE has taken the position, and in the appeal, SBE will take a position, well, I should say takes no substantive position on the matter. SBE is not arguing for or against either of the charter amendments. SBE is merely in the case to say, we need to print ballots starting on September 6th. And so we need a decision about whether to print these ballot questions before September 6th. We're really leaving it up to the parties to litigate the propriety of the charter amendments. The last case, Emmanuel Osachukwu versus the Maryland State Board of Elections, is a civil complaint filed in the Federal District Court in Maryland. Mr. Osachukwu is seeking to be an unaffiliated candidate in the Senate race for the 2024 election. And in his complaint, he alleges that the state law that requires an unaffiliated candidate to collect 10,000 signatures is unconstitutional under the First Amendment, 14th Amendment, and certain provisions of Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, which is the kind of framework for Congress and laws or constitutional provisions governing how Congress is assembled. OAG will be filing responsive pleading before the deadline, which is August 28th. And if there are any questions, I will take them now.
Dan, I had a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. So it appears that there's a number of petitions and issues that are pending that might affect the printing of our ballots. So,
Yes.
so what do we do if something is still up in the air and a court hasn't ruled about a candidacy or petition? Do we print it? In other words, what do we do when it's still pending in the
So-
court?
Right now, SBE's position has and always will be, SBE listens to a court. And right now, the standing court order is the order of the Circuit Court for Baltimore City, which says do not put it on the ballot. SBE is obliged to listen to that court order until told otherwise. Obviously, the Supreme Court has the jurisdiction to reverse that ruling and say, no, put it on the ballot. If that happens after September 6th, I'm hopeful it won't.
Same with me. Same with me.
Go into the operational reasons why that would be very difficult. And I actually have a Word document open in front of me, which is going to be SBE's brief to the Supreme Court, explaining with the support of 2 affidavits from the professional staff at SBE, why that would be so difficult and why we want to avoid that. If that happened, there are legal mechanisms in the election law article for kind of dealing with it. I'll leave it at that, but they're not simple and they're not easy. I suspect, and again, I can speculate all day. I'm one person. The Supreme Court scheduled oral argument in this case 9 days before we run up to that deadline. And in election law cases generally that move quickly, the Supreme Court in the past has heard oral arguments and very quickly thereafter issued an order saying up or down with an opinion that follows weeks or months later. So I'm hopeful in this case that the argument on the 28th will result in an order before September 6th and an opinion that explains that order sometime in the fall or winter.
So Dan,
Thank you,
the bottom,
Dan.
let me
Okay,
just
go ahead,
follow
Jim.
up, Mike. Just quickly, and you may not, I think maybe you answered it and you can answer it. But right now we have one or at least one petition that the lower court has says should not be on the ballot, correct?
2 petitions, yes. In both petition cases, the lower court has said, do not put the question on the ballot.
So my question is, and you may have answered it, what do we do? I mean, in reality, logistically, what do we do if the court says, no, they should be on the ballot, but the time that we printed our ballots has passed? How do we deal with that? If you can answer that.
Sure, no, we listen to the court and we print new ballots.
The whole ballot would be,
Well, so now we're getting into operational details.
I got you,
First,
okay.
we're get like, the answer is if the Supreme Court says this question must be on the ballot, SBE will put a question on the ballot. And operationally, we will figure out one of the saving graces, although it is not truly a saving grace, but these are jurisdiction-specific questions. Both questions are only being voted on in Baltimore City. And so when we're talking about statewide ballot production, I believe of the 1,990 ballot styles that are going to be used in the general election this year, 295 come from the city. So we're talking about a little over 10 to 15% of the ballots that we're going to produce are going to be affected by this decision, which means 85% of them hopefully are not going to be affected by this decision. So SB will find a way to make it work if that is what a court orders us to do.
Is there a deadline, Dan, in terms of the court saying it should be on the ballot, but we can't do it? Is there like a number of days that we can't do it?
Yeah. Well, there's the UOCAVA deadline for sending ballots to overseas
Right.
voters. That's the first deadline on September 21st. If ballots are sent to overseas voters that don't have the question on it, and then on September 22nd, the Supreme Court says, put the question on, we will deal with that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jake.
Thanks, Bryn, just a quick clarification. I think I heard you say this. Historically speaking, though, the courts have ruled in enough time to at least give us a direction.
Yes, we usually, I in the public domain that I've researched, every time the Supreme Court gets an election case like that, it is decided with a per curiam order, which is just an immediate order signed by at least a majority of the judges that directs what to do, and then followed up with an opinion explaining that order weeks or months later.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. And thank you, member Shelley. I'm glad to know that there's past precedence here.
Yes, to follow up on that with
go
Dan,
ahead,
it was
Zach.
just that the courts have been a great partner in understanding our timelines, and they usually ask for it. That's why we usually, in some of these cases here that Dan is party to, especially these Baltimore City ones here, he basically is just going in there going, this is the calendar, Your Honor. Please help us make sure that we comply with it. So, they're very cognizant of that, of our requirements and our facts.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Excellent discussion. And points of clarity. Moving on to Agenda item number 6, Title 13 late fee waiver request. The chair asks if each member has had the opportunity to review the Title 13 late fee waiver request sent to us prior to. Are there any questions or concerns or discussions with regards to those requests? Hearing none, the chair is open to a motion to accept the Title 13 late fee waiver request from staff. Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the waivers as written.
Motion has been made by Member Butler. Is there a second? It's been properly seconded by Member Weissman. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. It is unanimous and approved. Thank you very much, folks. And moving on to Title 14 waivers. Has the board had an opportunity to review the Title 14 waiver requests? Are there any questions or concerns? Hearing none, seeing none, the chair is open for a motion to accept the Title 14 waiver request.
I'll move that we accept the Title 14 waiver request.
It has
Mr.
been
Chair, I
moved by Member
second.
Butler and properly seconded by Member Jackson Stanley. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. It is so moved and with unanimous consent. And as well as under Title 14 waivers late fees. Is there a motion to accept the state board's recommendation for late fees?
I'll move.
Moved by Member Shalik. Is there a second? It's probably seconded by Member Weissman. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. The board's recommendation has been approved. Thank you so very, very much unanimously. All members
Mr. Chair,
being
can I just,
present.
can I ask you a
Yes.
question?
Yes,
I
please.
know we did it at the last meeting, just for people that may be watching or interested in this. Could we get a brief description of what that is, Title 13 and Title 14? In other words, what are they requesting and who's requesting, just to get a sense of what this is, this topic?
Sure. I assume that everyone was familiar with it, but
Yeah,
thank you
no,
very
I'm just
much.
saying
All
it
those
for-
watching,
for-
I hear you, Jim. Thank you very much. Alan, would you give us a brief overview of Title 13 late fee waiver requests and Title 14 waivers?
Sure. Title 13 involves candidate committees, PACs, party, central committees, all those in that filing criteria. And in these requests, there were 9 requests from candidate committees only. So they're seeking relief for late filing of reports. And Title 14 are businesses and nonprofits. Nonprofits that do business with the state, contracts of over 200,000, and businesses that hire a lobbyist or hire a lobbyist and have contracts with the state, they have filing requirements with us. So if they're late in their filing, they acquire or they have late fees. So they're also seeking relief.
Thank you
Any
very
other
much.
questions?
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you so very much. Moving on to number 8. Our regulations for final acceptance from the board staff for 33.04.01.02 definitions, section 33.04.01.07 response to requests, and 33.04.02.03 confidentiality of certain information. Jared, do you have staff to go over those for a refresher with regards to the final for the
Yes.
final vote? Thank you very much.
Um, Yes, I guess Dan is able to answer those questions for anything on the Comar provisions.
Sure, I can take over. So what you have before you, these were adopted preliminarily in January. They went out for the notice and comment period. And they are back now for final adoption, which will will place them in Code of Maryland regulations, give them the force of law. There's 2 kind of There are two different ones, and they're split into different COMAR provisions. One is about a sociological information exception for the Public Information Act. The other is about confidentiality of certain information and certain election records to line it up with the Secretary of State's address confidentiality program and the reasons someone can apply to that program. I'll start with the board's leave with the sociological information regulation. Just say this. This is a regulation specific to the Maryland Public Information Act. The Maryland Public Information Act permits anyone and any organization to inspect a public record. When a person asks for a public record, a unit of state government is obliged to disclose that public record to the requester. That's generally how the Public Information Act works. When there are certain exceptions to the Public Information Act, or I should say the Public Information Act has certain exceptions. One of those exceptions is called the sociological information exception. And what that exception says is, if an agency creates a regulation defining sociological information, it may deny that part of a public record that contains sociological information. And so various agencies around the state have promulgated their own sociological information definitions, their regulations, and that's what SBE would be doing here. If SBE has a public record, that could be anything from the correspondence of the board or public information logs that are kept, and it contains the sociological information identified in 33040102, the proposed amendment to 040102, such as date of birth, driver's license number, personal phone number, personal email address, social security number, voter identification number, the polling place assistance status. That information would be redacted. So the record is still available, but the specific sociological information is redacted. This brings SBE's practice into line with a number of things. First, there is a separate Public Information Act exception for public employees, state employees, that restricts an agency from giving out the personal home address, email address, or cell phone number of a state employee. And it seemed a little incongruous that SBE could not give out that information about employees, but could give out information about non-employees who it happens to have this information about. It also pulls it into line with a practice in the state that state agencies do not seek to give out people's date of birth, driver's license, or personal information that can be used for nefarious means. Now, the last thing I want to point out about this is the concern of how it affects voter registration records. And I will say that the answer to that concern is in the amendment to 33040107. And specifically the italicized language in B, except for use in carrying out a custodian's governmental functions, a custodian may not disclose under the Act. And so we are only talking about what is disclosed under the Public Information Act. Voter registration records are disclosed under separate law, both state law and the Federal National Voter Registration Act. And so this specific COMAR language is not going to affect how SBE treats and discloses the voter registration list and the information on the voter registration list. I'll also point out that in B2 sub D, there's an exception for if disclosure is otherwise required by law. And so if there is somehow a conflict between state law governing the voter registration list or the National Voter Registration Act and this provision, those laws would prevail. Do you want me to jump into the second one? Or do you want me to take questions about that regulation?
If there's questions now, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I had a question, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So Dan,
Michelle. Yeah.
so if a campaign or a group wants to see the registration records, they would get, correct me if I'm wrong, they would get the person's phone number, date of birth, that information would be provided?
If a campaign wanted to get a voter registration list through the normal means, you go to SB's
Right.
website, you fill out that form, you want the list, they will keep getting the same list with the same information on it that they have been getting. That list will not be affected by this regulation.
All right, go ahead, Dan. Thank you. Thank you,
Um,
Member Shaw.
The next regulation has to do with the board's confidentiality program. There's two confidentiality programs. One is a confidentiality program run by the Secretary of State that applies to all governmental records. And so if you apply to that Secretary of State address confidentiality program, you are assigned essentially a PO box that the Secretary of State runs to get all your mail. And any instance of your personal address or any personal identifying information in governmental records that are public facing, like SDAT, real estate records, or SBE records here, would be removed, would be redacted. And there's very compelling reasons for that based on who is allowed to apply to that program. It generally applies to victims of domestic violence and sex trafficking, people who deservedly so should not have their public contact information in the public realm. SBE, separate from that, runs a confidentiality program that is set up in Comar, where a person can apply to the local board and provide specific reasons. And a lot of these waivers come before you at your meetings. You'll see a lot of individuals in law enforcement or in the judiciary sometimes make requests under that confidentiality program to protect them as a matter of public safety from having information out there that could be used against them or used to harm them. So one is a state program run by the Secretary of State. The other is a regulatory program run by the State Board of Elections. Our State Board of Elections program did not include the same reasons as the Secretary of State's program. And this Comar Reg amendment pulls the Secretary of State's reasons for applying to a program and applies them to the SBE program too. And so a person could apply to the SBE program for reasons of suffering domestic violence, harassment, sexual assault, or stalking. Whereas before, if they suffered those harms, they only had the Secretary of State's program and couldn't necessarily come to SBE's confidentiality program.
So this brings us on par with providing protection to the voters. Okay. Thank you. Diane?
Okay, so I'm on board with this for the PIA request for 330401. If for the record, this has absolutely no bearing on and cannot be used to redact the voter registration list that the public purchases. And Dan just cleared that up very clearly. And if there's any unintended consequences with petition PIA requests, as Dan and I discussed earlier, that there'll be an alternative avenue to obtain pertinent information if need be for those people. So those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Is there a motion? Thank you, Dan. Is there a motion to accept the board's recommendations to for the board's regulatory recommendation for 33.04.01.02, 33.04.01.07, 33.04.02.03? Member Jake, Member Weissman?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
So moved. Is there a second? It is properly seconded by Member Jackson Stanley. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. It is with unanimous consent. Those
Mr. Chair,
regulations have been
if I may,
finalized. Yes.
So you were reading off the memo, right? You were reading those Comar regs from the memo that
From the agenda and the memo. Yes.
okay, so so that isn't all the regs. And I just want to make sure we actually cover everything that's on there. So it's
So
3304.
are we dealing with the memo or are we dealing with what's on the agenda?
We're dealing with the regs. There's a copy of the regs itself.
Right.
04B, regs for final adoption. It's 33040102, 33040107, 3302, 3302, forgive me, 33. Missing.
Is it 04, 02, 03?
I don't know if it's 04. It's
So
missing,
what
but there's
I am referencing, I hear you,
Okay,
Dan,
yeah.
is what's on the agenda and what's on the public record. I am looking at the memorandum currently sent on today. It's showing those three. From what I have here and what was shared, we will present for
Okay.
final adoption proposed changes to
Right.
following Comar provision. And it references the three that are on the agenda. I am seeing, I see Comar 3304.02.
Mr. Chair, I
But yeah,
think
go
what
ahead.
Mr. Coburn is referencing is there are, I believe what's on the agenda are the main items, but there are sub items as well in those Kumar provisions, and he wants to make sure that we are correctly moving all of them, not just the flag bearer from the big headlines,
Right.
which are on the agenda. Is there
That
correct?
is correct. So all of the regs are in 33 subtitle 04. There's two in 330401, and that's 330401, 02, and 07. And then there's
Mr. Chair, if I can make the proper, I have the regulations up.
Yeah.
Proper
Yeah,
motion, of
I'm
course.
looking for those regulations now.
It's
item 4B.
B underscore regs for final approval.
Reading off the memorandum that I received prior to. All right. Got it. Go ahead, Member Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that we move 33.04.01.02, 33.04.01.07, 33.04.02.01, 33.04.02.02, 33.04.02.03. And I believe that's it.
That's it. Yes. It has been properly moved. Thank you very much. And is there a second? It has been properly seconded by Member Jackson Stanley. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. It has been moved. Unanimous consent. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now moving on to number 9 on the agenda for departmental legislation. Jared, would you walk through each of these? And I believe there are 4.
Yes, there
Just
is.
correct me if I'm wrong.
So I will go through one at a time, and then do you want to vote each one separately, and I can answer any
Yes.
questions about it?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, so we have 4 departmental bills here. The first one here,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Jake.
Before we begin, can you just walk through kind of what the process is in terms of where this goes from here? I think for
Oh,
our new
sure.
members, it would be helpful to.
so the reason why we have to do this in August and it's this month and this month only is because of like what member Weissman said, is that there's a process. So this is the first step here. So basically the board will approve departmental legislation. It will then go to the governor's office. They will review it, and then upon, after their review, it will either be submitted to the House or the Senate, to the chair of Ways and Means or Triple E for us as a departmental bill, and then we would move forward. It would move forward in the General Assembly here, and they need time to review it. If not, at that point then they allow the agency, ourselves here, to seek out sponsors for the bill to present on that front there. So there's another path. That's why there's a lot of time. Additionally, after for our submission, we have to put a packet together for the governor's office by early September. That includes like fiscal impact, small business impacts. Of course, all our bills don't really have that because we're election, but it's a part of their process there. And, they have all the agencies that they're reviewing here. So that's why that's why they want it so early in the process and not immediately before session starts. But based upon our time, in order to meet the governor's legislative office deadlines of early September, this is the only board meeting in which we would have a chance to review and discuss the legislative changes. So with that, the first one is one of the easier ones here. This is changing election law article 9-311.1 G. And basically, this is about the permanent absentee mail-in ballot voters. In G, there's this deadline here about not less than 75 days before the election, in which the local board sends absentee ballots to voters. Then we have to send a written notification as of the date that is at least 90 days before the upcoming election. It was very confusing. It wasn't clearly defined. So with this change, basically, I put a window in, which is no sooner than 120 days, but not less than 90 days before the election, we're going to send a written communication to the voter who is on the permanent mail-in ballot list. So basically, the cutoff period is 120 days beforehand, so we know that's when we cut the list, and then we will mail it before 90 days before the election, so that they can make any changes to the method chosen there. Additionally, the second change in G was that if the first attempt to contact a voter by written communication failed, we were supposed to send another written communication using a different method. Basically here, it just allows the state board to attempt to contact a voter using another method rather than sending a written communication. So if we call them up, if we email them, or any of the other methods there, we can have a little bit more flexibility there to contact the voter. But it still requires that we attempt again to contact that voter using another method there. So it's not as limiting, but it's it gives us a little bit more I would say room to do. So that's the first piece of legislation.
Will we vote on these one at a time? Will that work?
We are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion at this time on the first one proposed by the state administrator, section 9-311.1? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the board's legislative recommendation. Chair recognizes Member Weissman.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been properly seconded. I first saw Member Butler. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you. We have consensus. It is so moved. Thank you very much, Jared. Moving on to number
So
two.
summary bill of number 2. This one is a little bit bigger here. But basically, as you were aware, we have 3 election related plans out there. We have a polling place plan, we have an early vote center plan, and a drop box plan. What this bill does is basically combine them into one overall election related plan for submission for the board to review and approve. So you get a complete county perspective on how they're going to facilitate voting and for the entire county. So it's not looked in a silo. So you can kind of look at each plan individually, but overall you can kind of see, oh, this area is being covered by more drop boxes or an early voting center, or there's enough polling places in this vicinity here to cover those voters there. So you can look at it holistically or granularly as well. One of the bigger changes too is that the submission of when the plan would be it needs to be approved. I moved it up a month from 6 months to 7 months. This was in response to the litigation that we were ongoing during this last election here. It was really butting up against a lot of our deadlines for printing and getting the materials. So giving that extra month will probably relieve a lot of stress between Dan and myself if we do have litigation for that. And it just allows us then more opportunity to inform voters of their polling place locations, early vote centers, and drop boxes. Another change is the precinct polling place location in the plan there is tied to the 2018 election. We've had a lot of elections that were we've had redistricting since then, and in the plans that you saw for the polling place plans here, it was a lot of changes due to redistricting. So constantly having that benchmark won't necessarily be beneficial as we keep moving forward with elections, and we can have another redistricting subsequent to 2018. So you would have, one in 2020, and then if we don't change this, you could have one in 2030 as well. So this is kind of changing the benchmark from 2018 to the first statewide general election after redistricting, so that in those 10 years to see if there was consolidation or changes, it would be in the same period of capabilities there. I kind of reordered a few aspects of things, which is why you see a couple of other changes there. We, in the analysis for in the polling place plans, we talk about analysis about historically disenfranchised communities from the most recent report published by Vital Statistics. They don't really go into the granular level of affected precincts, so we just remove that from the law because they don't really provide that information there. And one of the other big aspects here is about geographic distribution of early voting centers. You can't really have geographic distribution of early voting centers under a certain amount because you want to make sure that you want to go where all the population is. So for counties with 4 or more early vote centers, that's when you can kind of factor in equitable distribution, because at that point there, you don't want to have 4 just all where there's one singular population center there. You want to then start looking at it and saying, maybe at this point now, I would want to look at seeing where we can kind of expand geographically throughout the county to enfranchise as many people as possible there. So that was kind of the bigger issues there. And so that's kind of the overall plan and the bill itself.
All right, thank you, Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Marinix, just want to make sure I understand this. So this is changing. So after a redistricting cycle, every local board has to submit these plans, similar to the plans that we signed off on earlier this year, I think, or late last year. Time is a little amorphous.
Yes.
Sorry about that. I guess my question is, does this prohibit local boards, if they decide that they need to make a change, then you shift around some polling places or some early voting centers, they can still come to the state board and say, we need to move these polling places, we need to move these drop boxes, we need to move. They still have the ability to do this. This is just the once a decade required submit plans.
Right. So they still, right. So if they still need to move or anything, that if they have to modify or change the polling place plan that you voted for, they still have to do the same requirements, right? So it doesn't affect the documentation necessary for the change that you're proposing there, or what they're proposing. It just the first, I would say, the first package that you would receive is going to be all together rather than piecemeal. So you get one big package, and then if there are changes in between elections or anything like that, then all the provisions are exactly the same.
So this does not preempt the local boards from moving if they're from changing prior to a
Right.
decade from now.
Yeah.
It just allows them to make a comprehensive plan to be presented. They could use it as a way to present a comprehensive plan instead of piecemeal. Okay,
Correct.
all right. Is there a motion? It has been moved by member Weissman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been properly seconded by member Shalek. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. So moved. Thank you very much, Jared. Moving on to number 3.
Number 3, it was a little foreshadowed earlier in the state administrator's report here, is about special elections. And special elections vote by mail.
Could you reference this section? Sorry.
So it's election law article 9 dash 501.
Thank you.
There's a couple of other sections in there, 9 dash 502 that need to be modified, 9 dash 504 in there as well. So basically, this bill here, the special elections, this last one, working with the Prince George's County Council, we saw some difficulties in the process with current laws with the council. These are looking to help modify it in a way. So if the election is conducted by mail, we need at least 90 days after the issuance of the resolution so that, you can have a candidate filing period. There can be a period then to print the ballots, mail out the ballots, and make sure that voters can have enough time to receive ballots and vote the ballots. Additionally, that if the election is scheduled, or if it's within 120 days of a regular scheduled election, it should just automatically go on to the regularly scheduled elections. The newer provision here is, which we've had some historical precedent, is allowing county council to issue a resolution that a special primary not be held. This is May, so this is optional for them, and that they can then just have a special general election, and to permit the state administrator to reduce any time or requirements for election-related activities that we kind of had in this one here, except for time, place, and manner requirements relating to voting. So, if, for example, like we have to truncate the window from, when we publish the special election ballot to the certification of it to a day, or, later that day, these are kind of like the little, I would say, deadlines that would be able to be reduced. But they would be nothing to doing with time, place, or manner requirements relating to voting. So those will always be sacrosanct. Additionally, here, since it's a vote by mail, that a local board is not required to mail a specimen ballot, because they are just getting the ballot in and of itself. You don't want to confuse people by mailing a specimen ballot and then a mail-in ballot. Mail-in ballot voters do not get specimen ballots in normal elections here. And so just kind of making sure that that is clear in the law. So when the other ones here is when the vote by mail ballot is supposed to be received by an eligible voter. Currently, it's at 14 days. That's way too close to an election. It will not give any time to see if people lose ballots or anything like that. Currently we have on the state side, it's 43 days when we start mailing out ballots to eligible voters. So this change here is 30 days. It allows for, the canvass. It allows for the ballots to be delivered and enough time for, people who may or may not be on vacation or away, the time to get back and vote their mail-in ballot as well. And then finally, this one here was return vote by mail ballot by mail, in person, or by Dropbox. I just wanted to put that in there. We currently allow it by Dropbox. I looked at it, and there was a Wisconsin case out there about Dropboxes and whether that constitutes in person or if that's a part of office, dropping off issues there. So this was just kind of making sure that that litigation, we're just codifying our policy here that you can use drop boxes. This statute was also written prior to drop boxes in existence. This is just basically updating it and codifying current policy there for for special elections. So with that, this is bill number 3, Department Bill number 3 for your approval.
Thank you very much. Recognize Member Weissman with a question.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Administrator, just have we had any conversation with any of the local boards or with Mayo on this proposed legislation?
So Mayo wouldn't be necessarily affected by it. Basically, there's 2 major counties that would be affected by it. So overall, I don't think that they would have a major issue with it. I think that this gives them more time and kind of basically codifying some of the policies and practices that we just continued with the Prince George's election.
Can we make sure just to touch base with them before session?
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, we can
Member
definitely
Weissman,
The Montgomery and Prince George's.
Yeah.
So the 2. Thank you.
In fact, it's probably better because it's one less election. They would like that. Yeah, right. Especially on the county level there. So.
Member Butler.
So E, it says the county council or board of county commissioners may issue a resolution that a special primary election not be held and permit the state administrator to reduce the amount of time required or allowed for any election related action except for any time, place, or manner requirements. So what this is saying is that they can put a resolution in that they're going to go to the board and make sure that they can have reduced time limits as long as we're overseeing it. Is that what we're saying here?
Right,
Okay.
exactly, yes.
Okay. And that would have helped in this last one because,
Right.
okay, all right, okay. And again, I agree with you, Jake, about checking with the other boards to see if there's any backlash from this, because I don't see any. However, every time we extend certain deadlines, and it extends other deadlines that the boards have that they have to meet in order to do things to get to that point. Okay, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the the board bill that is being recommended?
I'll move.
All right. It has been moved by Member Shalek. Is there a second? It's been properly seconded by Member Weissman. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. All right, thank you very much. Is so moved unanimously.
Thanks.
Go ahead to number 4.
And we have one last one here. It is election law article 4-102. This one here it just came up recently here. This one I know that the local boards would prefer because as you heard earlier, we have 2 statewide petitions that are ongoing that were submitted on the first Monday in August, coupled with other petition efforts that the local boards were dealing with for charter amendments that were wrapping up. So this here moves one of the deadlines up a month to the first Monday in July. This is for new party petitions. By moving it up to July, it would alleviate some of the stress right now. Like, for example, with the Green Party, it would have been done already, and then they just would have to process the RFK petitions. So independent candidates still have the first Monday in August to submit their petitions. So that kind of still allows them. But if you're a new party, you just have to do it in July. This helps also with the other provision in the law, which says that a candidate, for these new parties here have to then submit their certificates of nomination on the first Monday in August. So by having it recognized, the the other candidates, the Democrats and Republicans, would then know whether or not they have a new party challenger in their petition. Because right now, there are candidates that may or may not be coming on the ballot as a Green Party candidate here. So this kind of, I would say, is better for voters because they'll know come the first Monday in August who is going to be on the ballot for political parties. And I would say it's good for candidates as well, because then they would know, especially if you're seeking the nomination of a new political party, that the first Monday in August, you would be officially on the ballot and you can continue on with your campaigns rather than waiting the 20 days now to see if the party is going to be recognized. It's not a substantial impact upon petitioners for the new parties as well. When they were submitting the Green Party, I had kind of mentioned this to them and they didn't object to this idea of moving it to July a month early. The second part about this was that a submitted petition effort for the formation of a new political party may not be resubmitted later for any later petition efforts if the original petition effort failed. So because petition is you can collect signatures for 2 years. At one point here, if you submit it in July, it fails, you can't just ask for those signatures back and then collect new signatures and then resubmit those, because the individuals submitted at that time for that petition effort, they might not want to re-sign for any later petition efforts. So you submit with the one petition effort, and at that point there, if not, then you have to go collect. You have to start back at zero. That's what the 3 signifies now. But that's what this bill is in a nutshell.
Member
Question.
Butler?
So they have 2 years to collect the signatures. So does this move their 2-year deadline back a month too, or do they now have 1 year and 11 months?
No, it just moves it back. So they still have the 2 years. They just need to submit it now instead of the first Monday in August, the first Monday in July.
So we have more time to do our work. Okay.
Exactly. And it helps with the local boards. It spaces it out. So like in July, then they can process all the petitions for a new party. Then in August, they can process all the petition efforts for candidates that are unaffiliated.
So,
It helps
Member
balance the
Shaw?
workload for the locals.
Right.
Okay. Member Shaw?
yes, thank you. So Jared, what you're saying is, let's say a new party, or whatever party's trying to petition to get on the ballot or for whatever purpose, if they come in with, let's say, 12,000 signatures, but the board disqualifies over 2,000. So they've got 9,000 plus good signatures, but they don't have enough to get on the ballot. Does this say that they can't use those again, any of those signatures, to refile? In other words,
Right. It would be just like a candidate that would be filing on the deadline and then submitting it and then failing to appear on the ballot. Because
So
then
they
they
can't
would
use-
not be able to appear on that election ballot. They would need to restart their efforts again.
even though those signatures have been certified by our board or the local board as valid, they're gone, they can't be used.
But it's a different petition effort at that point there, right? Like so there's no I would say there is a deadline, but there is no need to stop at a certain level, right? They could have said, oh, we could have collected 15,000 or 7,000 more in order to make sure that the threshold is met. This is basically, ensuring that, you can't just constantly submit petitions. Oh, I got over 10,000. I'll submit, see what's good, see what's bad, and then come back and go, oh, now I need to get 5,000 more. I'll submit another 5,000. Oh, I'll see what's good, what's bad. Now, because that point there it's just a process that it just is not conducive to the petition effort and not the intent of the law. Like the intent of the law was you gather enough petitions, you submit it all one time, you rise and fall on that petition effort, just like every other petition for ballot issue, charter amendments. You know, you get it back and say, okay, well, I've taken these ones. Now I'll just supplement it and try to get on the 26th ballot later on. No.
No, I'm just referencing in Montgomery County this year, there was a petition drive to limit the county executive to 2 terms. And I recall that they came in initially with X number of signatures, but the local board didn't certify that they had enough to get on the ballot, that issue. So then they came in with a supplemental filing, adding to what they had filed, and it was accepted. Am I?
Those are
Missing
different because
information?
those are charter and they allow for supplemental filings and everything,
Okay.
versus this, which is a new party petition.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead, Member Weissman.
It's correct me if I'm misunderstanding here, Mr. Administrator, but if I came in with a new party petition in January of the year, and turns out I was short, I could still, under this law, come back with more signatures before August of that year, and those earlier signatures would still count. What we're talking about is if in the year 2020 I didn't hit the number, I can't say in the year 2022 that the signatures from 2020 for 2022, but within that 2-year time frame, those earlier signatures would still count.
Yeah,
That-
right. Because at that point there, we'll be working with them, right, on that front there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Member Butler.
Okay, and I think, Jared, I think we discussed this, because this is for petition signatures for the formation of a new political party. And that's that's that 2-year time period, which gives them, and we're still giving them the full 2 years. The other petitions for petitions that go on the ballot, they are done differently. They do bring them into the local boards check, and then they have a certain amount of time period to go back and collect any more if they need them before that date.
Correct, right. This is strictly for new party petition efforts only.
That's what I thought. Okay, because we talked about this. Thank you.
Great clarification. Thank you guys very much. Is there a motion to move? I recognize Member Jackson Stanley making the motion. Is there a second?
Yes,
Oh,
thank
did you have
you.
a question? Okay, okay.
No, making
Is
the
there-
motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Probably
Thanks.
seconded by
Mr.
Member
Chair,
Weissman.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I made,
yes,
I
ma'am.
made the motion for the comment period and to say, Mr. Shalit, Jim, your question confused me because your Montgomery County example made me think that I was missing the point of what this was talking
Right.
about, but Diane and others clarified that this was for the formation of a political party. And thank you for the discussion because I was unclear at first, but now the spirit of the motion itself is solid for me. So yes, I stand
Awesome.
on making the motion to approve.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone, for their points and their points of clarification, significantly are valued. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been probably seconded by Member Butler. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. It is so moved, unanimous consent. Thank you all so very, very much for your due diligence in getting us through that. We are moving on to the next agenda item. If I am clear with this agenda, are there any updates before I move on to the next item that I'm not aware of? All right. Departmental, we are going on to old business, delegation of duties. And there's been a lot of due diligence on behalf of you guys, the board members, as well as staff with regards to moving this forward and getting us to a better place. There has been proposed updates that has been shared with the staff as well as with each of you from Member Weissman particularly, but there's also been discussions about this over time. And we are at, I believe, a really, really good point to move us in a more collaborative and comprehensive manner with regards to delegating the duties of the board. And with that being said, I see Member Shalik raising his hand, but I just wanted to Is there something you wanted to add before?
Yeah,
we move
I
into-
apologize for not
Okay.
raising this earlier, going over everything. I just
Mhm.
had a question about one of the duties, if I could.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. That's the purpose of this part, is for us to go over the delegation of duties. I know Member Weissman has something that he would like to present, but well, you have the floor, Member.
Thank you,
Shelley.
Mr. Chair. It's on page 3 of I think the 8-page, page 3. And it's like, you go down like 4 and 5 on page 3. I know that we're in the process of getting all new equipment for the state in terms of voting equipment and all that, which obviously is going to be a very, very expensive and important purchase. My question is, reading items, lines 4 and 5 on page 3, my question is, what input does the state board, we, have in that process? I read it as if our board is not going to be involved in the decision making. Am I wrong? In other words,
Well,
what role do
that's
we
a
have?
great question. That's a great question, because we tend to discuss this in closed session because it's a
Okay,
part of procurement.
okay,
And we are informed now, we have procurement as a part of our bailiwick, with regards to how we oversee this current administration, and which we're very, very proud of. So in the past, that may not have been the case, but it is a collaborative effort at this time with the members, along with the staff, specifically under the procurement. Now you see procurement as a part of the administrator's report, but some of those specific discussions with regards to, I guess, RFQs, RFIs, with regards to acquiring those voting systems, that is in the public sphere anyway, but we will discuss the particulars in closed session. Yes, is there any other comments on that? Dan, I'm open for your insight on what was just stipulated.
Sure. So, by and large, I have nothing to add. So the 3 items that Member Shalek, well, the 2, but I'm going to group them all together: 9101A, 9101C, 9102C, and actually the 4th one, 9102D. So they're all about a new voting system, and as you've discussed, there's a new voting system on the horizon. The 9101C and 9102C are, I think, I would agree with you, Mr. Chair, procurement matters. So when it says acquire the voting system selected and certified, it means sign the contract and pay, which is governed by the state finance and procurement article, and is something that, I mean, the state board could do, but it would be fairly difficult if we only have you at monthly meetings to have you do that. I'll leave it at that. The part where the board, where it is more practical to have the board's input, are 9101A and 9102D, certifying the voting system and determining and considering factors during the certification system. So the way the new voting system works in Title IX is there are candidates. Those candidates have to be EAC certified by the Election Assistance Commission, or laboratory certified by the Election Assistance Commission. And then that's one consideration. Its certification by the EAC is one consideration in a list of about 13. And the state board has to actually certify voting systems in order for a voting system to be acquired. So I'm trying to guess at what you would like to do, what you would want to have input on. And my guess is the 9101A and 9102D areas about certifying the new voting system and reviewing or looking at the factors for certification are the substantive input, whereas 101C and 102C, 101C really, the actual acquiring of the system is going through the BPW process to buy the system.
Thank you very much, Dan. Member Butler.
I kind of agree with, I understand what Jim is saying, and I think with this big of a purchase, I think if we have to have a little more input during that time period, I don't have a problem being, asking to do a little extra time to come and take a look and see what's happening, because we've got bad publicity out, we've got all this stuff, and we are setting up a whole new voting system. So I think Jim is saying that he wants to be able to see a little more of what's going on. And I kind of agree there, just because of everything that's happening in the world currently. So I don't have any problem. Like Dan is saying, it would put us in this position here, but we would have to have more meetings. I really don't have any problem with having a few more meetings when we reach that point where there's a discussion between maybe this or that. I've looked at the machines before, we used to have them at all the different conventions and stuff and whatever. And there's just so many different ways and different things that you can get on them. And I know that we've got specific things that we're looking for, but I think it's going to be one that the board is going to need to take an interest in as we reach that point, I think is my comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Member Shalik, and thank you, Dan, for your explanation. I do know that we have robust discussion with regards to procurement, specifically with our voting system, oftentimes in regards to security. With regards to procurement, I do think and I believe our current administrator is open for dialogue and discussion around these types of purchases from members who are knowledgeable and would like to assist in that. But I don't know if there is a role for us at this time for authorization to review all of the requests being made to the state. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair.
No, go ahead.
No, I don't want to
Member
interrupt.
Shalik?
No, worst case scenario, let's say that the process goes along and we are presented with a recommendation to go with company A. But our board doesn't want company A, we want company L. In other words, what if our board doesn't like what's given to us? It's such a big
Right.
big
I don't
production.
know if I appreciate
just-
that. I don't know if I know that we as board members are not a part of the selection process and review of each of those proposals. If the board, if the state board administrator puts forth a recommendation for a specific entity, I believe we would have opportunity to discuss why and for what measure, and they could provide us a brief summary or overview as to why they were selected opposed to others. There could be various reasons and rationales why L was not selected based on the RFQ that was placed. If they are not in compliance with the request for qualifications, requests for information, if they're not responsive, then that's what it could come back as why they were not selected. If the board takes an issue with one company over another, I would then question how we got there. And so we definitely need to consider that as if we're moving in that direction, which could be a slippery slope as to how we got there. I would like to leave the state administrator, leave that responsibility in the hands of the state administrator and his staff. All right, that's me personally speaking. But Member Weissman, I saw you first, and then Member Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little confused, Mr. Shalik. Is there a specific proposal that you have in terms of change to the delegation of duties, or are we just talking speculative?
Jay, my question was, by reading that delegation of duty, my question was, do we have any authority delegated to us regarding the selection? I wasn't clear if we have a delegation of duty to participate. That's all. I didn't, by reading it, it looked like we
So
were,
for
we didn't
my
have.
conversations with the administrator, and please, Mr. Administrator, correct me if I'm wrong. I I don't think, and full confession, in my list of um, delegation of duties changes that I shared with the board last month, I had considered including part of this in here because there is an argument that all the selection of the voting system should not be under the should not be the board because it's a highly technical thing. There's an argument that certification could be with the board as it's less technical. I did not include it because frankly this was our first time taking a bite at the delegation duties apple. I wanted to start with some common sense things that I thought we could all rally around. That's my understanding, Mr. Administrator. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
So, yes, I would say that, right, this is something that can be bifurcated in a sense, right? Selection and certification are not the same thing here. Because in fact, like the agency, the board can certify multiple voting systems, right? Like, there's not just one voting system out there that would, that can be there. Like the EAC certifies like multiple systems, right? And so that's something that the board can probably do based upon the criteria set forth, making sure that we comply with Maryland law and federal standards, right, for the equipment. That's something that I think that the board can stay and keep. The selection part, like the chair had mentioned, is there's procurement rules about that. There are factors that come into play with not just technical, but also then financial impacts as well. And so, we cannot, that is where, and I think Dan kind of agrees with us on this one here, is that we cannot give that authority over to a 5-person board to procure, to actually do the selection process. Like there needs to be one person there to go, yes, this is it. Now that's something that as a delegated duty, right, I would then tell the board at the end of my report and go, I selected this one here, and then you can ask me questions, because it would almost be the same thing that I would present to the Board of Public Works, which is this was the highest, say the highest technical score, but it was second on say financial purposes. Or I went with the number one financial because I saw a massive cost savings between 1 and 2, and it ranked second or third technically, but the differences between first and third technically were minuscule. And so that's something that we can talk about publicly about it, but the actual selection and moving forward and signing the contract and that portion of it all has to be with the state administrator on that front. So that's why I think that you can kind of separate the two out and say, I can present to you, like, here's a system, from a vendor voting system out here that I want to have certified for it. We can present that to the board and saying that it meets all the technical requirements here based upon criteria. And so that can be something still within the board, but then the actual that actual purpose, you just that cannot be done for the selection.
Right, and I just want to know that I'm reading it, if I look at 101C, it is selected and certified as in past tense. It's not in the act of doing, but anyway, and that may not matter either. But with that, Member Butler.
Okay, so I think we're talking about a couple different things here. So the duties of the state board, this whole list, where did this come from?
This list here, this is the delegated duties. So this is a list that staff went through to go through the entire election law article where it says state board must do this.
Right. Okay.
And then we kind of go like this. Well, what, the state board, as Dan can testify to, sometimes it refers to staff, which would be me and the us doing daily stuff, or you guys, the 5-person board. Like the state board shall accept certificates of candidacy. You're not taking a certificate of candidacy, right? Like that's Alan's job. That's like my, and we're here, on those days there. So this is kind of going through it and saying, okay, what it's just kind of it's clarifying what role you have in making sure that I present to you everything that needs to be presented to the board for a vote, or what is going to then just be more administrative or technical that the staff would handle on a daily basis, right? Because it would be like saying like the state board shall train. You're not training. I'm conducting the training.
Right,
So you would just be like, I'm delegating this duty
yes,
to
so I
this.
wanted to clarify that. So I think what Jim is asking, is there anywhere in here that we can put it where the state board has some kind of some more say somewhere along the line with you, I think is what he's asking. Is there somewhere in here where we can delegate to the board more input on the actual choice of the machines? I think is what he's asking. How could we put that in here? Is that correct,
Well,
Jim?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
So I
from
think-
what, Jared, I mean, from what I'm hearing is the way it's written in your interpretation, our board must accept what we're told is the selection. That's, I mean, it's clear, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But I mean, to me, the new equipment affects basically everything we do. I mean, in running an election, but I was just, I would like to see that we do have some participation, but I defer to the board on that.
So I think that there is, through the idea of, the criteria and that process there and the certification, which is what we're, I think the difference is there's a difference in role, right? Like, I think you're supposed to give us the guidelines here of saying, this is the criteria in which we should judge voting equipment and voting systems, and bring it and bring those systems to us for certification. And then we would, look at it and analyze it. But the actual selection of the process and the winner of that is in procurement, and that it in and of itself has to be delegated, because it is a lengthy process where we deal with other agencies, looking at the equipment, making sure it's there, figuring out the technical capabilities of it all, and then weighing those factors with it against the cost factors as well. That has to be with the state administrator for that selection. And because afterwards, when we go through it, then we do debriefs with all the other vendors who were not selected as to why they were not selected, or they can answer questions. That's all done administratively through the process here. So I think that, this is something too, like once we select it, like I said, this is something that would be a delegated duty. So I would present to you there. At that point there, you have the ability to question the selection and make any of your comments and concerns known at that particular time. It still then goes in front of the Board of Public Works at that point. If there's major concerns or comments that the board has wanted to address, I guarantee you that at that point there, the 3-member public Board of Public Works there would probably raise the exact same questions to me and ask at that point there, and they have overall capability to reject the contract and to come out there. We've constantly seen bids and awards being fought over at the Board of Public Works in those 2 votes there. So I think that there is allowing input. It's more of a comment, and then moving forward with it.
So the one
Jerry,
comment
just
you
to be
just
clear,
made-
1 second, Member Butler, I see you and I saw Jake's question, hand. Your office works in procurement, you work in concert with the state procurement office,
Yes.
correct? You do not make these selections in-house solely on your own.
We follow all the rules and guidelines of the state
you.
procurement offices,
Thank you.
right? Yes.
Thank you. Member Weissman?
Mr. Chair, and I just want to clarify this for full transparency for the board. We can move any of these duties that are listed, that are currently run by the staff over to the board. We are not a working board. I don't think we want that. I don't believe we have the expertise. I personally would not be in favor of moving selection of the voting system to the board, in part because we don't have the expertise for it, and in part because, typically speaking, and the chair knows procurement far better than I, when there are appeals and lawsuits, I don't think any of us want to be deposed or face interrogatories about selection. I don't think any of us have the time or interest for that on this board. I think looking at the delegation of duties is a important exercise, and I think figuring out cases such as certification where it might make sense for the board to be involved, I understand. I personally would not be for the board taking over procurement responsibilities or decision-making responsibilities, but I do also just want to make it clear so we're all on the same page. Anything on this list is something that in the past has been delegated to the hardworking staff and it could be taken back to the board. It's just not something I believe we have the expertise or time for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Member Butler.
Jared, when you were talking a few minutes ago, you said that we give the guidelines to the board. So the guidelines are set up that the board approves the guidelines of what you're going to purchase. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
So, no, that's one of the things that is possible, right? Because that's one of the delegations of duties there that can be reverted back on that. So, if you as on page 3 there, right? It's they're lumped together there, right? So it's there was what was it? Right. It's like acquire a voting system selected and certified, right? Like selected is definitely part of it there, but it's in consultation with the local boards, select and certify a voting system. The select it would be delegated, but the certify voting system can be there. Determining and considering certain factors during the voting system certification process, right? Like that could be, that's still, factors that you can keep. It's something that was delegated in the past because we had more of the expertise there, but that's something that, we can present to you as a policy and move forward with it, saying these are kind of like the factors, the overall factors in which we would be considering, for the certification process there. And, and that goes a long way, which is, about the decertification of a voting system if they no longer meet those required standards as well. So, you can provide the factors, but again, the selection process is, that would have to be delegated.
Yeah, I agree with you. I understand what you're saying about selection. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. But you were just talking about the guidelines and
Right, exactly. I guess, right. That was one of the things that's in the law there as well.
And we will be working with you beforehand on all that before you even reach that
Right.
point. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. I'm back to you, Member Shalak. Are you sufficient
No,
with
I,
the response so far? I mean, I think it's something to look into, and
Yes.
if you could, present us with a recommended suggestion to move forward.
no, I
on,
no,
I think
I
that would be
appreciate
great.
the conversation.
Yeah, I think that
No,
would.
I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate it.
And now I know, Member Weissman, if you would like to present your updated recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I believe, I know I sent around the final, hopefully, version of my proposed amendments to the delegation of duties. Just to run through them quickly, Mr. Chair. Election law 2-303F, approve emergency precinct polling changes. We would change this from delegated to it being not delegated except for 90 days before an election. Election law 2-303.1C, approve or reject LBE's polling place plans would move from delegated to not delegated. Election Law 3-204A, designate public agencies and non-governmental agencies as voter registration agencies where qualified individuals may apply to register to vote. Keep as delegated, but require the board to be notified in advance. Election Law 10-301.1B10, the establishment of an additional early voting center after local board and governing body of county agreed to establish additional center, move from delegated to not delegated. Election Law 10-301.1C, designate each early voting center, move from delegated to not delegated. Election Law 13-249G4, issue public report on coordinated expenditure finding and impose civil penalty. We would change from fully delegated to keeping the report as delegated, but having the board impose the penalty based upon the administrator recommendation. And then election law 13-604.3D, after investigation of potential violation of 13-328 or 13-250, and hearing, issue a public report on the findings and decide whether to impose a civil penalty or refer the matter to state prosecutor for future investigation. We would delegate the issuance of the report, the investigation and imposition of fine or referral. The board action for hearing and development of the fine structure would be through COMAR. I want to especially thank Mr. Demarinis. I want to thank Ms. Butler for their really helpful input and recommendations, as well as yourself, Mr. Chair. This is the same document that I sent around to the board again yesterday, and with that would move those changes.
Is there any discussion, questions, updates from the members? Yes, Member Butler. We can't hear you. Your mic is off. We can't hear you. Your mic is off. Member Butler, your mic is off. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Sorry, okay.
It's okay. Could you
I was
start over,
saying-
please?
I was
Okay.
saying that I couldn't hear Jake because
Oh,
his,
no.
his mic is breaking up in mine. And so the last sentence that he was saying, I can't understand.
Oh, he was praising he was praising you for your assistance in regards to getting us to this
Now I
point.
take it all back.
I took that, Jake. I'm sorry. But no, that's, and getting us to this part where he significantly appreciates the collaborative effort for us to address these concerns within
Well,
our
Michael,
delegation of duties.
Michael, when we were talking yesterday or the day before, was there some discussion that you still wanted to have on this for clarification?
No, the point has been clarified.
Okay, and Jared is on board with this last one, the way we've looked at it
Yes.
and the way it's
Yes,
written down.
I think that's how it came to be
Yeah,
clarified.
I
for
think
me,
we've all
yes,
discussed it kind of all
Yes,
week long, kind of. Okay, so everyone's pretty happy with how we've rewritten them, correct?
And yes,
Okay, there you go.
many of this, much of this is commensurate with what the board is putting forth in the legislative recommendations, which I'm really excited about.
Right.
It looks comprehensive and for our actions to the legislature, I think. But anyway, thank you guys so very much. And with that, is there a motion? I'm going to go ahead and put this to accept. Jake, stop. Is there a motion to accept the recommendations put forward by Member Weissman with regards to our delegation of duties? These updates for citation EL section 2-303F, citation EL section 2-3031C, EL section 3-204A, election law section 10-301.1B10, election law section 10-301.1C, election law section 13-249G4, election law section 13-604.3D.
So moved.
And if there's a second. Thank you. It's been moved by Member Butler. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been properly seconded by Member Jackson Stanley. Thank you so very much for your due diligence. Member Weissman, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. And so moved. Thank you very much. Stellar work. in my opinion. Don't tell anyone I said that. I just made a public statement. All right. Now, with that being said, on any new wait a minute, bylaws.
Bylaws.
So
Yes.
we have our bylaws sent out to everyone. If there are no updates, if there are no edits, if there are no recommended amendments to our current bylaws, they will be sent to you for signature. Now, that is not to say a year from now, when we want to look at this again in July, that you want to make an update, and that's totally fine, because we do this annually, folks. So upon your review, I would like to, if there's no questions, concerns, issues, we will move that to be sent to you for signature. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure these bylaws would include the delegation of duty packages as amended right now, one big package to basically submit that.
Be signed
to you.
off on. Okay. So once the updates are made to the delegation of duties, based on what we just voted for, it will then be sent out for signature.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all so very, very much. Greatly appreciate it. Is there any new business? No new business to address, bring forward. All right. Any disclosure of campaign contributions? Well, we had scheduled our next one. We'll review this. Our next meeting is for looking at my calendar. I think we already have that set. Thank you, Katie, if she's still on, for getting that set for us. I think it is set for, do we have that September
The
26th?
24th, it looks like.
24th, I got it.
September 24th?
Yes.
That's a
That's
Tuesday?
Tuesday, yes.
Yes,
And what time is that, Mr. Chair?
I think it's 2 o'clock.
2
We have it
p.m.,
set for
2.
2. Thank you very much. Jake, thank you.
September 24th at 2.
All right. So we all have that set. And again, thank you guys for getting us set in advance.
I'm
Um,
currently okay with that, but we had
Okay.
kind of a
Well,
shake up
please
there
let
on-
us know a week out or what have you, and we'll
Yeah.
try to work with you on that. Go ahead.
Just in case, I'm just gonna let you know, my daughter came home and then ended up having to have a procedure today, so she's coming back for a follow-up for that, but I
Oh,
think we're
wow.
okay time-wise, but it's it's a good thing she was here, nothing else.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
amen.
Thank
Totally
you.
understand. Okay,
Okay,
definitely
good.
understand.
Thank you.
Uh,
So currently,
and
it looks all right.
I'm sorry. No, what's that now? I'm sorry. Is she okay?
We'll see. My daughter's got a lot of health issues and we go round and round, but we found a whole brand new one today, so.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
It's
Pray
been-
for strength. Pray for strength.
I know, always, yeah, especially for her, the poor old thing.
No, pray for your strength as a mother. I understand.
Well,
You never get past it.
I'm just so glad she was here because she flew in like 2 days ago and so I was at least here to help handle it. Okay, anyway, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We do wish her a speedy recovery. Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And your prayers is great too.
Amen.
Yeah.
And with that, Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
There has been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll
It's been motioned by Member Jackson Stanley, probably seconded by Member Shallek. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you,
Mr.
guys.
Mr.
Wish
Chair, you can
all
always
well.
count on me to move to adjourn.
Like it.
Okay.
Thank you.